In the ancient archives of numerology, there exists a pairing that is whispered about with both reverence and caution. It is the union of the builder and the nurturer, the life path 8 and the life path 6. On paper, this looks like the ultimate blueprint for success. You have the 8, the archetype of authority, material abundance, and infinite power, standing beside the 6, the archetype of domestic harmony, sacrificial love, and protection. It feels like the perfect equation, one to conquer the world and one to make that world worth living in. But, and this is the crucial but that most numerologists fail to warn you about, this dynamic is often a disguised cage match. In this video, I am going to challenge the common misconception that 8 and 6 are an easy match. Instead, I posit that this is the single most karmically demanding relationship in the spectrum, because the 8 is driven by Saturn, the planet of restriction, discipline, and hard lessons. They view love as a structure to be managed. But the 6 is ruled by Venus, the planet of beauty, emotion, and connection, viewing love as a fluid state of being. Therefore, when these two collide, we are not just seeing a relationship, we are seeing a war between logic and emotion, between the office and the living room. If they fail to bridge this gap, the consequence is not just a breakup, it is a total collapse of the empire they built. However, if they succeed, they become the dynasty. They become the couple that others envy, the power couple that builds generational wealth and generational love. The stakes are absolute. Let us open the book on why this specific frequency creates such high voltage.
Why do these two numbers find themselves irresistibly drawn to one another in the first place? It is rarely a gentle drifting together, it is usually a collision. The 8 is often exhausted. To be an 8 is to carry the weight of the world, to constantly strategize, to fear poverty, and to maintain a facade of invulnerability. When the 8 meets the 6, they feel something they rarely experience: safety. The 6 offers a soft place to land. The 6 is the warm meal, the listener, the one who says, "Put down your sword, you are safe here." To the tired warrior 8, the 6 looks like salvation. Conversely, the 6 is often plagued by anxiety about the world's chaos. They want to fix everyone, but they secretly crave someone strong enough to protect them for a change. They see the 8, stoic, capable, financially literate, powerful, and they see a fortress. The 6 thinks, here is someone who doesn't need me to fix them, but who can support the family I dream of. Because of this mutual need, the need for a soft place and the need for a strong wall, the chemistry is instant. But this magnetism is deceptive. It is based on filling a void, not necessarily on understanding the other person's soul. The 8 falls in love with the service the 6 provides, and the 6 falls in love with the security the 8 provides. Therefore, the seed of transaction is planted early. They enter the relationship thinking they have found their soulmate, but what they have actually found is a highly effective business partner for the business of life. And when the romance fades and the transaction becomes apparent, the resentment begins to boil. The 8 will start to feel smothered by the 6's care, interpreting it as control. The 6 will start to feel abandoned by the 8's ambition, interpreting it as coldness. This is the magnetic deception.
To understand the friction, we must deeply analyze the life path 8's operating system. The 8 is often misunderstood as simply greedy or work-obsessed. This is a shallow reading. The 8 is driven by a deep-seated, primal fear of powerlessness. In their past lives or early childhood, the 8 often experienced a loss of control or severe lack. Therefore, their ambition is a survival mechanism. They work 80 hours a week not because they hate their family, but because they are trying to build a fortress so thick that nothing can ever hurt their family again. For the 8, love is demonstrated through provision. When the 8 buys the big house, pays the tuition, and secures the retirement fund, they are screaming, "I love you," in the only language they trust, material security. They view emotions as turbulent waters that make the ship capsize. So they repress, they compartmentalize.
When they come home to a Life Path 6 who wants to talk about feelings for 3 hours, the 8 feels a physiological panic. They feel inefficient. They feel like the walls are closing in. To the 8, the 6's demand for emotional intimacy feels like a demand to lower the drawbridge while the enemy is at the gate. The 8 thinks, I am out here slaying dragons for you. Why are you complaining that I didn't wash the dishes? This fundamental disconnect is the root of the 8's isolation. They can be surrounded by a loving family, created by the 6, and yet feel completely alone, trapped inside their own armor, wondering why their hard work is met with tears instead of applause.
Now let us turn the lens to the Life Path 6. If the 8 is the king-queen, the 6 is the high priestess-priest of the home. The 6 operates on the vibration of responsibility. Their fatal flaw is the belief that they are responsible for everyone else's happiness. They are the cosmic fixers. When a 6 loves you, they will micromanage your life, your diet, your wardrobe, and your emotional state, all under the guise of helping. For the 6, love is demonstrated through presence and service. They don't care about the expensive car the 8 bought if the 8 is never in the passenger seat. The 6 craves harmony above all else. When the 8 comes home stressed, cold, and detached, the 6 takes it personally. The 6 thinks, if I just love him enough, if I just cook a better meal, if I just make the house more beautiful, he will open up. But when the 8 refuses to open up, the 6's love turns into something darker, resentment. The 6 begins to keep a mental ledger of sacrifices. I gave up my career for your ambition. I raised these kids alone while you traveled. The 6 becomes the martyr. They sigh loudly. They use guilt as a weapon. They become passive-aggressive. Because the 8 is immune to subtle emotional cues, the 6 feels invisible. The tragedy of the 6 is that they burn themselves out trying to keep the family warm, only to realize the 8 prefers the cold air of the mountaintop. The 6 feels like a servant in their own marriage, unappreciated for the invisible labor that holds the 8's life together. This leads us to the inevitable clash. The interesting thing about 8 and 6 is that both are control numbers. The 8 controls the macro. The 6 controls the micro. The 8 wants to control the outcome. The 6 wants to control the process. When these spheres overlap, war is declared. Imagine this scenario. The 8 decides to invest a large sum of money in a risky venture without consulting the 6. The 8 sees this as handling business. The 6 sees this as a betrayal of the family's security and a disrespect of their partnership. Or the 6 decides to renovate the house to create more harmony, disrupting the 8's home office. The 8 sees this as a frivolous waste of resources and a distraction. The argument that follows is never about the money or the renovation. It is about value. The 8 values autonomy. The 6 values consultation. The 8 will use logic. I made the money. I decide how it grows. The 6 will use emotion. We are a family. My feelings should matter more than the profit. Because the 8 hates to lose an argument and the 6 hates to admit everything isn't perfect, they reach a stalemate. The 8 becomes a tyrant. The 6 becomes a doormat. Or worse, a nag. This dynamic creates a toxicity where the 8 stays at work longer to avoid the judgment at home, and the 6 becomes more controlling of the children or the household environment to compensate for their lack of control over the 8. The house becomes a cold museum, perfect on the outside, empty on the inside.
If the relationship survives the initial explosions, it often settles into something far more dangerous, the silent years. This is the roommate phase, but with higher stakes. The 8 and the 6 are both numbers of commitment. They do not divorce easily. The 8 hates failure, and divorce is a failure, and the 6 hates breaking up the family unit. Therefore, they endure. In this phase, they live parallel lives. The 8 becomes married to their career. They get their validation from awards, bank balances, and the respect of peers. The 6 becomes married to the children or their community service. They get their validation from being the supermom or the pillar of the community. They meet in the hallway. They discuss logistics. Did you pay the mortgage? Yes. Did you pick up the kids? Yes. They are a highly efficient corporation. To the outside world, they are the perfect couple. They host the best dinner parties. They have the vacation home. But there is zero intimacy. The sexual polarity dies because the 6 cannot be intimate with someone who is emotionally closed, and the 8 cannot be intimate with someone they feel is constantly judging them. They are two ghosts haunting the same castle. This is the trap I mentioned in the title. They are too successful to leave, but too miserable to stay. They are bound by a golden chain of shared assets and shared history, slowly suffocating each other. But why? Why does the universe pair these two together if it is so difficult? Because numerology teaches us that we do not attract what we want, we attract what we need to learn. The 8 and the 6 are karmic mirrors. The 8 is in this relationship to learn that power without love is tyranny. The 8 needs the 6 to teach them that vulnerability is not a weakness, but the ultimate strength. The 8 needs to learn that you cannot manage a human heart like a stock portfolio. The lesson for the 8 is to come down from the tower and sit by the fire. The 6 is in this relationship to learn that love without boundaries is self-destruction. The 6 needs the 8 to teach them independence. The 6 needs to learn that they can be whole without needing to be needed. The 8's detachment forces the 6 to find their own strength, to stop defining themselves solely as a caretaker. The friction exists to sand down their sharp edges. The 8 is too hard, the 6 is too soft. Together, the universe is trying to create a diamond, something hard enough to last, but capable of reflecting light. If they can realize this, that their partner is not the enemy, but the teacher, they can break the cycle of resentment. They must realize that the 8 provides the structure for the 6's love to flow, and the 6 provides the purpose for the 8's ambition. Without the 6, the 8 has no why. Without the 8, the 6 has no how. So, how do we move from the silent years to the power couple? We need a tactical strategy. We need to apply the logic of the 8 to the emotional needs of the 6. Step 1. The home office rule. The 8 must learn to transition. You cannot walk through the front door as the CEO. You must have a ritual, changing clothes, a shower, a 10-minute drive in silence where you take off the armor. When you enter the home, you are entering the 6's domain. Respect their energy. The 8 must schedule intimacy if that's what it takes. Put date night on the calendar and treat it with the same reverence as a board meeting. Do not cancel. Step 2. The gratitude audit. The 6 must stop criticizing what the 8 doesn't do and start praising what the 8 does do. The 8 runs on respect. If the 6 says, "Thank you for working so hard for us. I admire your drive," the 8 will melt. The 8 will want to give the world to a partner who appreciates the effort. The 6 must release the need to control the 8's emotions. Let the 8 be stoic. Do not take their silence as a lack of love. Step 3. Define spheres of influence. Stop fighting for control over the same things. Let the 8 handle the investments, the long-term strategy, and the external battles. Let the 6 handle the home environment, the social calendar, and the internal culture. Trust the other person in their zone of genius. When the 8 trusts the 6 to nurture, and the 6 trusts the 8 to provide, the power struggle vanishes. When an 8 and a 6 actually figure this out, they become unstoppable. They are the Dynasty archetype. This is the couple that leaves a legacy. Think of the Obamas, or fictional couples like the Underwoods, without the murder, or any historical pair where one commanded the public sphere while the other commanded the private sphere, and together they were a monolith. In a healed 8-6 relationship, the 8 builds the castle, and the 6 fills it with music. The 8 brings home the resources, and the 6 alchemizes those resources into memories, culture, and happy children. The 8 protects the 6 from the harshness of the world, allowing the 6 to remain soft and loving. In return, the 6 heals the 8's wounds,
giving the 8 a sanctuary where they can recharge their batteries to go out and conquer again. They become a closed loop of energy. The 8's masculine structure holds the 6's feminine flow, regardless of gender. The 6 feels safe. The 8 feels respected. They host the charity galas. They build the wings of hospitals. They raise children who are both successful and kind. This is the promise of the 8 and 6. It is not a path of ease. It is a path of greatness. But greatness requires the sacrifice of the ego. The 8 must sacrifice the need to be right, and the 6 must sacrifice the need to be the victim.
So, is the life path 8 and 6 compatibility a trap or a treasure? It is a treasure guarded by a dragon, and the dragon is your own ego. If you are an 8 watching this, your challenge is to open your heart. If you are a 6 watching this, your challenge is to release your grip. Most couples fail this test because they wait for the other person to change. The 8 waits for the 6 to stop nagging. The 6 waits for the 8 to stop working. That is the path to divorce. The path to the dynasty begins when you change the dynamic. This combination is not for the weak. It is for souls who signed up for the advanced class in relationships. If you are struggling in this pairing, know that it is normal, but it is not terminal. You are simply in the friction phase of the diamond polishing process. But this is just the surface. To truly understand the mechanics of your relationship, you need to look beyond just the life path number. You need to understand your soul urge, your expression number, and your personal cycles. A 6 with an 8 soul urge behaves very differently than a standard 6. To get that level of clarity, I invite you to get your free personalized numerology reading at the link in the description. Don't let your empire crumble because you didn't read the blueprints. Go to numeralpath.com right now, uncover your chart, and start building your dynasty today.